And I have a photograph of myself when I'm 7. I don't have shoes on my feet, but I know, I look at that girl and I know the dreams she has. She wants everything. And I know that is not just me. There are so many girls out there who want just as much. And for that dream to be cut short at the age of 10, at the age of 11, at the age of 14, I think that's just wrong.
This is Climate Curious, the podcast for people who are bored, scared, or confused by climate change.
I'm Mariam Pasha, the director and curator at TEDxLondon and the co-host of this podcast, alongside the amazing Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Hurst, activist and advocate exploring what positive masculinities can look like, and self-confessed climate normie. Welcome to Climate Curious Live with TEDxLondon. We are here in London, here in Covent Garden, and I am joined by an amazing guest co-host today. Who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Daze and I'm still figuring out what I do, but a lot of my work is around social justice and climate. So it kind of takes me into the political space of working with government and running for election. Also takes me into the arts and culture space with creating like things like infographics and working infographics, very Gen Z. Like I come correct with my content creation, but also working with like museums. So yeah, and then like ultimately, I'm a grassroots organizer. I like to organize a disruption on the streets. I'm sorry,
as you do.
I am the person you dislike on a Monday morning while someone's like glued themselves to a floor. I mean, I am the person.
Honestly, I'm not trying to get to the office on a Monday morning, so it's chill with me.
Yeah, I'm like, this is a real reason I do it, so I can end 9 to 5 culture.
I love this. This is important. So today we've got a really interesting conversation coming up, and I think the thing that makes this one interesting is that this is in neither of our wheelhouses, right? Like this is not, like we were discussing this before, and this is not something that we ever talk about. But it's also something that is so important to talk about.
Yeah, and it's kind of, like when we talk about child marriage, it's someone's life. It's the kind of, we have to create a society of where that's not okay. So like, how do we do that? But then also, how do we hold the families who are going through it? And how do we like change the culture in a way that's not colonialist as well? There's so many different like ways of looking at this issue, and how do we address it?
Right, and how is it linked to the climate crisis? This is like
this
a
is
massive
one thing. I've never
question.
really thought about it. But then also like I've been working in the climate space. So it's kind of like, especially with young people, because a lot of my work is focused on youth engagement. So it kind of makes me think, this is the time to have this conversation.
Well, in the words of AC Alone, you don't know now, but you're going to find out.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to welcome our next guest to the stage, who is actually one of our former TEDxLondon speakers. And it was an absolutely amazing talk where she spoke about her relationship to child marriage and the work that she's doing to end that in our society and in societies around the world. So our next guest on the podcast is Faith Mwangi-Powell. She's the CEO of Girls Not Brides, the global partnership to end child marriage. And Faith believes that every girl has the right to lead the life that she chooses. By ending child marriage, we can achieve a safer, healthier, and more prosperous future for everyone. Girls Not Brides is the only global partnership entirely focused on building a worldwide movement to end child marriage. And as its CEO, Faith is responsible for catalyzing the partnership and supporting the broader movement. So I'd like you all to join me in welcoming Dr. Faith Mwangi-Powell. I know that the people at home are not going to see this, but I told you this already, how much I love this jacket that you're wearing. I just want to let you know that I really deeply appreciate the styles that you're dropping on us today. Thank you so much, because do you know, it's not easy, everyone out there. I know you think that this is given. I know that you look at us and you think, oh wow, these guys, they're not even putting, listen, this is hard work. So thank you, Faith.
I try.
For everything that you do.
I try.
For the community. I appreciate it. Okay. So we want to start at this place of what it is that you do and why it is that you do it. I think that that's a really important conversation for us to have, right? You've given a talk. Some of us have listened to it, but we don't want to assume that everybody that's going to listen to this episode has heard the talk. So would you give us like a brief overview of the work that you're doing and what brought you to this place of doing that work?
And I feel like also just to add, like, I would love to know, like, how did you get here? Because it's such a, especially like, how did you kind of start to recognize the intersection between child marriage and climate? Because that's one thing that I personally want to like figure out.
So, how did I get here? What do I do? My everyday job is to work with amazing, amazing leaders from the globe, across the world, who are working, who wake up every day and wanting girls to have a better life. How did I get here? I got here because I grew up in a village in Kenya with a dad who believed that girls deserve more. I grew in a home where we were 6 girls and 4 boys, and all of us have PhDs and what have you. We are all over the world changing the world. Not because we are clever, it's because somebody championed us. And I know my own neighbor and a neighbor on the other side did not get that opportunity. So I walk in this world knowing that I'm very blessed and very privileged woman, and whatever I can do to make other girls and other women to feel as privileged as I do, I feel like it's an assignment. It's not a job. It's like an assignment, and it's something I want to do. So before I started working on child marriage, I was working to end FGM, female genital mutilation, and that's another harmful tradition or practice which happens to many women across the world and denies them the opportunity to be the women they need to be. So working in child marriage to me is not an accident. It's a choice that we need to be there to champion other girls like ourselves. And I remember myself, that small girl, and I have a photograph of myself when I'm 7. I don't have shoes on my feet, but I look at that girl and I know the dreams she has. She wants everything. And I know that is not just me. There are so many girls out there who want just as much. And for that dream to be cut short at the age of 10, at the age of 11, at the age of 14, I think that's just wrong. And if there is anything we can do, if there is anything I can do, and not just me, if I can be part of a movement or a part of a group of people who want to do better for girls, count me in. I don't know. I'm not the expert. The families, the communities we work with are the experts. But if I can be part of that conversation, for me, there is nothing which gives me much satisfaction than that. And to be sitting here with you in London, from a village in Kenya, that's a big dream which has been dreamt and achieved. And I'm sure the other girls dreaming. And I would like to be the one spearheading and championing them and saying, you can do this.
Wow.
My gosh.
I literally want to cry. I'm like, I'm choked up over here.
Oh my gosh. Like, I'm just like, I hate these episodes, and I say this too much on the podcast, but there's always these episodes where I'm like you just have to listen. There's not really anything you can say or add to the conversation. I do have some questions for you though. I'm interested, for people who don't understand what the global picture of the situation is, the global picture of child marriage. What is it that we are dealing with, and what is the impact of that on the girls you're working with? What's the impact on the girls, and what's the impact on their outcomes in life?
You did say you don't like statistics, but I'll throw you a few statistics.
That's true. I don't like.
I'm here for the statistics,
but I'll break them down for you so that they are easily to grasp.
Yeah.
So we define child marriage as any marriage for a girl below the age of 18. Either married to a same age or married to an older person. So in some cases, we've seen people getting married at 10 to a 40-year-old, at 14 to a 50-year-old, or even young unions of 12-year-olds coming together and they're in marriage. So it happens. So it's any marriage for a girl below the age of 18. That is how we define it. And even in this country, in the UK, the law just changed this year, actually. Girls were allowed to marry at 16. So the law just changed about April. I think that it was actually the last thing the Queen did to consent the bill before she died to change the law. So I'm really thankful for that, because that's a big campaign for so many people to change that law. And I'm very grateful for that. So globally, 12 million girls are married below the age of 18 every year. Globally. That works out as 23 girls every minute. It works that 1 girl every 3 seconds. So we can calculate, by the time we are sitting here having this nice conversation, how many girls are getting married. You can do the math. So I don't know how long I'll be talking, but you can figure it out. So it's a big component. So you can imagine that as you sit, as you go in the train, you can be thinking, I wonder how many girls have been married right now before I get home. So it's a serious issue. And what child marriage does is that it denies girls. Imagine, I can see many of us are girls in this room. Imagine you being married at 18 or at 10. What were you doing when you were 10? Imagine somebody turning up and saying, I'm going to be your husband. Start there, make it personal. And imagine there is somebody else who is happening that today. So it's a serious issue. So at 10, there are medical implications. Some girls get pregnant at 12. So imagine giving birth at 12. I'm a mother. I waited until I was 32 to get a child because I was like, anyway, let's move on. Imagine if you did that when you were 12, the implications that has. So that brings medical implications, right. Even death at, giving birth. Yeah. Then beyond that, there are many medical, there's trauma. I always say, I just compare it like being raped every day. So there's trauma, psychosocial trauma. And then, of course, you are denied your opportunity to go to school, because that is the prime. At 10, that's when you are in primary 6 or 7 or whatever grades you do here in the UK. I went to school in Kenya, so I don't understand the grades here. But you're in that very early primary school. At 18 is when you are maybe going to university. Yeah. To be thinking that by 18 you have 3 children. Come on. It's really tragic. So it denies the opportunity. And the world we live in, if you don't have education, you are just perpetuating a cycle of poverty. Because then how do you even get an income? So there is so many implications of child marriage and how it affects girls. How I summarize is that it denies the girls the opportunity to be who they need to be. Right. It denies them to be CEOs like myself. It denies them to be doctors. It denies them that opportunity. To me, that's why it's wrong.
I think, for someone who, I've never really had the conversation around child marriage, but why do people kind of buy into this cultural practice?
There are so many drivers of child marriage. The first one is poverty. Poverty is actually a big issue if you don't have a choice. If you have 5 children in your home, you have to feed them, you have to clothe them. If you're poor, dowry seems like a good solution to solve the poverty problem. It's also a social norm. It's a cultural practice that this is what my mother did, so this is what I'll do to my children. Right. It's also, in some places, a safety thing, because when girls get out there and they get into teenage pregnancy, nobody wants them. So it's better if they are married then, so that if they get pregnant, they are within the safety of marriage. So it's a protectionist thing. So there are so many drivers. Some people say it's a religious thing. I don't believe that. I'm religious and I've not seen anywhere in my own religion saying this is good. So there are so many issues which really perpetuated, and sometimes it's also perpetuated by this culture of silence. Nobody wants to say anything. Nobody wants to challenge the status quo. People are so afraid of social sanctions. If you're in a community and you say, my own dad experienced that when he took us all to school, everybody was saying, what's the value of educating women? And it's only that he was a chief, so he he had status already in the village, but he would have faced some sanctions to say, why are you going against the grain? We don't educate girls in our community. What's happening? Right. And we actually quite isolated as a family because we were like the family over there who goes to school and their daughters drive cars, that we felt like we don't belong just because we had gone to school. Because on occasions we would wear a pair of shoes to school. You know, there were so many things which really make people want to belong, so they adhere to things they don't agree with because it makes them safe.
Every podcast needs a GOAT.
That's greatest of all time.
And ours is the global bank Citi.
Citi is TEDxLondon and Climate Curious's headline partner and has been with us every step of the way on this podcast, supporting our vision and encouraging us to be courageous and adventurous with our ideas.
Instead of your typical boring ad, we actually thought you might be more interested to hear about some of the initiatives Citi has played a part in.
With the support of the Citi Foundation, the British Asian Trust provides specialised business training to 600 young entrepreneurs so they can earn a sustainable income.
For example, Faria, a young woman facing barriers to independence, took the digital acceleration course and was able to launch a micro-enterprise online and on social media.
It's great to see projects like this supporting female education and encouraging financial independence, which helps build resilience to the impacts of climate change.
Nice one, Citi.
Thank you for making this podcast possible.
Now, back to the show. Now, you gave a TEDx talk here earlier this year, and you spoke about the relationship between child marriage, forced child marriage, and the climate crisis. And I'm interested in, and I'm sure the listeners are interested also in what that link is. Like, if you had to describe that, what would you say? If you had to describe that, how would you describe that link?
I think I've talked about poverty, and to also say that the conversation between climate change and child marriage is not a conversation we started this year or last year. This is a conversation we have heard for a very long time, but nobody was paying attention. Now climate change has become a big thing. Everybody is talking about it. So it's like, let's have a conversation around this on the table. But the link is this. If you look at the Horn of Africa, where families are becoming desolate because their crops are not yielding because of drought, their cows are dying because they don't have anything to feed the cows. They are literally, people are getting into desperate situations because they have no livestock, they have no yields because of drought. And this drought is causing families to think, okay, what is the alternative? And girls have become the commodity to sell. Because there is nothing else. If you have 6 children, all your cows have died because of of drought, all your crops have not yielding, you need to feed your children. What do? It's very easy for somebody to say, I have few cows to give you for your daughter. That reduces the mouths to feed.
Right.
So it's actually intertwined with poverty. It is intertwined with desperation, and really household economy is being really desolated because of this climate change. We have seen in Malawi the floods causing a lot of devastation there. We've seen in Pakistan with the floods. We've seen in Bangladesh. We've seen in Mozambique. These are things, if you remember the farming in 2007, Save the World, you remember, is it 2007? Lots of girls were actually so vulnerable that they were being sold into marriage as well. So it's a linkage of how families are getting really desperate because of what climate change is doing to them. If you look, even I look at my own home where I grew up. We have a big farm. We have a lot of coffee, and we used to pick coffee when I was young. I go back home and I get very disappointed because that coffee is no longer there. Why? Climate change.
Right.
And that was a source of income. That's actually the coffee money is what took me to school.
Right.
Now, the families who are there don't have that coffee anymore.
Right.
So what's happening to the girls in the village right now? So there are so many issues which are really making families very desperate because climate change is increasing vulnerabilities at the household level. And when vulnerabilities increase, domestic issues, violence increase, child marriage increases because people are looking for ways to survive. because people have to survive.
How do you think the conversation has changed over the last years? Because you've been talking about how this conversation is something that's been, like, it's been had, right? But it's only now that people are really starting to recognize the urgency of these issues.
I think the conversation has taken two turns. There are people who are very sympathetic and they understand and they can see the link. There are people who are saying, oh, you guys, you gender people, you want to hijack our conversation. You want to just steal the limelight. When I did the TED talk, one of the comments which really stuck with me.
Listen, you can't read those comments.
I read them. I read them. I was like,
don't do it to yourself.
One of the comments which got to me, I was like, this woman is crazy. Who does she think she is? Telling us about climate change. Climate change has nothing to do with child marriage. Go speak to whatever. And I sat there thinking, I have hit a nerve. I didn't actually I wasn't upset. I was actually very happy that somebody has heard and they have reacted.
Yeah.
So I was really, really happy that somebody had, because that is that we want to evoke that anger. We want people to get angry, they will get over it, and then they will engage with the conversation. Because in the past, it was like you're talking to the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is not was this a conversation that you were having 5-10 years ago in the past?
When I worked on FGM, since 2015, we are having this conversation in Ethiopia, how it's affecting girls, because in some of the countries, FGM or female genital mutilation is a precursor for marriage.
Right.
That girls will go through FGM, then they are called as adults.
Right.
Then they can be married. So we will talk about this, that you could see an increase in FGM because of the issues happening around climate change. So we were talking about that.
Right.
But we were kind of not quite sure also whether it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
It was a debate who nobody was really listening.
Yeah.
And now that people are listening, beating us pretty hard. I tell you, it's brutal out there. I'm sure you know.
Yeah. Yeah, man, streets are cold. I know.
Oh, it's like,
honestly,
what did I say? Yeah.
Daze, I'm wondering if you can guess, right? We've got 3 words that begin with C that are potentially, I don't know why I'm making this into a game, but that are potentially making this worse. If you had to guess what those were, it's not carbon. Just so you know. Do you want to have a guess at one?
Making it worse. I would say maybe culture. Because it's like kind of, if you're not addressing the culture aspect. And I think a lot of the conversations around gender, it does play into these older cultural practices that we're not really addressing. And they're kind of like festering in a way of they're just, you get what I mean? They're getting worse and worse and worse just because of that level of acceptability that there is.
I need to rewrite the question. So we've got 4 words that begin with C that are making this worse. Culture was not the one that I was looking for, but it is a good one. Do you know what they are?
I know them.
Okay, go and give them to me. Or do you want me to tell you?
So we are looking at three words now. We are looking at climate change, we are looking at conflict, and we are looking at COVID. So those are the triple C. So, and we are seeing that with climate change, I've talked about it. We are looking at conflict. Of course, conflict increases vulnerabilities, humanitarian settings, and that when there are humanitarian crises, the people who are most at risk are women and girls. Rape, marriage, just shoot through the roof. And COVID, there is an estimation that because of school closures, there is an estimated 100 million more child marriages which are going to happen by 2030 just because of what COVID has done.
Yeah.
What COVID is likely to even be doing is undo. By 2019, I keep telling people the world we woke up in 2019 does not exist.
Right.
We are in a very different world. In 2019, we had hope. Child marriages were declining in Asia. Child marriages were declining in Ethiopia. We were seeing progress. People are excited about change. COVID was also on the move. Now we are in the verge of reversing some of those gains we have had if we are not accelerating the efforts. Really, I talk about peace, trade, and climate change. Let's have peace. Let's have trade so that people have money, people have income, and then let's address climate change from a gender perspective. Let's make it gender response. Let's include women and girls in the solution because they know what they need to be able to do better in their own families. People have solutions. They just need to be given the opportunities. Yeah.
And two things in this conversation really stand out to me, right? One is like the interconnectedness of all of these issues. I think for me, it's really clear now how, like, what the link is, first of all, but secondly, like how all of those other areas are also connected to the same issue. And the other thing that really stands out for me is that what you just said about women and girls need to be involved because they know what they need. And you almost sit here as a living embodiment, right, of that principle, that you as a person, when given the resources and the tools that you needed, know how to make the solutions, find the solutions. For me, this is like a really heavy conversation, right? Quite an urgent conversation also. I'm wondering what kind of solutions we're seeing in real time, because you speak about the idea of us seeing, or in 2019 it was a time of hope and we could look at the world with optimism in our eyes, whereas now we are losing some of those gains that we've made. So is there any progress being made right now in real time?
And are there like certain solutions that can kind of weather the turbulence of this like moment of crisis that we're currently in? Because there is going to be more pandemics and stuff in the future. How do we make sure that those don't become something that adds to the issue that we're already facing?
What gives me hope in my job every day is that I'm not doing this alone. Even as I sit here, I don't feel like I'm sitting here on my own. I sit here on behalf of over 1,600 organizations in over 100 countries who wake up every day. And this is what they do. So for me, the fact that there are people like that, and these are not individuals, these are organizations, 1,600 people. The fact that there are organizations like that who care about this as much as I do, it gives me hope that we can, what we did in 2019, we can do it again.
Right.
That gives me hope. The other thing which gives me hope, which is, to me, is amazing, is that there are governments who are really turning the tide. If you look at Sierra Leone, I was in the UN meeting last 2 weeks. That's where I got 2 weeks ago in New York. I always say I got COVID in New York. I was in this meeting in New York, and I met the Minister of Education in Sierra Leone. Right. And the Minister of Sierra Leone is transforming the way girls go to school in Sierra Leone. And he's not alone, there are others. But he's transforming that to the extent that they have target for girls going to school. They are going to allow even pregnant girls to go back to school. They are going to allow even married girls who are able to go back to school
So important.
Because for me, while there is no silver bullet, and I say this a lot, education comes close. That if you give a girl education and opportunity, and I'm not just talking numeracy and literacy, it's not about math. It's really giving people skills so that they can use it. The third thing is when you hear governments giving cash transfers to households to say, let's give you conditional cash transfers so that your girls can stay in school and your girls can stay home and not get married. If we can scale up those type of things and be innovative, but also not just go always with the solutions. If we can sit down in the dirt with people, wherever they are, let's meet people where they are. Sit down with them and say, how do we solve this problem? You'll be surprised. We are all champions of ourselves. Everybody wants the best for themselves. I have never met anybody who think I want to be in the streets, or like everybody, even the thug in the street, they want the best for themselves.
Especially the thugs in the streets.
Especially the thugs in the street. They want the best for themselves. So if we can actually sit down with them and say, what can I do? How can we do it together? You'll be so amazed by the solution. And I think that is what, even in my own organization at Girls Not Brides, we are saying, we need to actually engineer this movement we have created and say, what are the solutions we need to put on the table to end child marriage? And that gives me hope. So in the midst of the crisis and all that, I'm seeing the human spirit. I'm seeing the resilience of human beings, and I'm seeing the innovativeness of people, women and girls, even girls themselves, stepping up and being champions for themselves and saying, this is what we want. I don't think I would have been able to champion myself when I was that age, but I'm being so impressed by girls coming to say, this is what we want, this is how we want it, this is where we want it. I say, okay, let's do this. So I think for me, that really gives me hope. Right. That people are not waiting to be given. They are taking. And they need to keep taking.
That's amazing. I'm like in such awe of you.
And now it's time for our climate confessions. Let's fess up to the bad habits we just can't kick.
I'm going to share one with you first. And my one is that winter is here. I've been trying really, really hard, not for the benefit of the climate, just for the benefit of my gas bill, to not switch on the gas.
The struggle is real. Tell me about it.
Cost of living is a crisis. So I'm trying to not switch on the heating, and in my mind, I don't know why my mind works in this way, but the solution that I figured out in the mornings is to go into the bathroom and switch the shower on before I get in the shower. So I just leave it on for about 5 minutes to warm up the bathroom, and then I spend an excessive amount of time in the shower in the mornings. I just watch my YouTube. Who's oohing out here in the audience, you chiefs? Like you're not doing it. I just watch YouTube videos and stuff in there. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's the only time. What? No, I don't do that. Huh? What? No. What do you do, Daze?
Who's watching YouTube videos in the shower?
Do you not watch YouTube videos in the shower? What? Sorry, no. There's an audience.
Can we like see who watches YouTube videos in the shower? It's a man thing, dude.
No, you said as well. Okay, all right. Oh no, it is a man thing. Oh,
it's a man thing.
Once again, men are trash. We've got to really work with this, guys. We've got a lot of work to do. Okay, Daze, do you have one? Climate confession.
So, growing up, my favourite part of winter was basically getting a new winter jacket. And this is still something I do today. So when I say I've got so many different types of trench coats, and this year, I'm not going to lie, I'm still going to go and buy myself a winter jacket. I've already eyed up my winter jacket in Ghani. It's happening.
You know what it is already. Shout out fast fashion. Are you doing fast fashion or are you doing investment pieces?
So the thing is, like, in my way of going, okay, Daze, we like to shop. That's something that's happening already. Like, it's not something I'm willing to give up. I'm so sorry. That's awful. But I was like, I was like, if I buy less things and then like investment pieces, that's what I'm going to be doing, like for the ongoing future. I try not to do the fast fashion, but once in a while.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I know, I'm a sucker for anthropology.
Listen, this is the life that we live. It chose us. We didn't choose it. Okay. Doctor.
No.
Would you like to share with us what your climate confession is?
You just want one?
How many do you have?
There's a whole list.
I can't think of. I think we all have our
but we're talking about you.
But for me, I have to. I could do better. I could switch off lights in my house a little bit more. I tend to just switch on and forget, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. Yeah, and I also fly a little bit too much. But I also believe, having fly.
There you go, the justification coming in.
Yes, what I believe is that for the kind of work I do, some of these conversations you cannot have in Zoom. You need to go sit down with the people eyeball to eyeball and say, let's do this. So I fly a little bit too much, and thank God we didn't fly for a little bit because of COVID, but now it's opened up. So I'm flying a little bit more, but at least I'm conscious about how we can do better. But I think that's an area, perhaps if I can take the train to Nairobi, perhaps I'll do.
That would be so long train journey.
But I've taken a few trains to Amsterdam, so I feel really good.
You've done your part.
I've done a little bit, but I think I can do more.
A fair
I think I can do more.
Yeah. And in fairness, whilst flying might be unavoidable, you can Zoom in the dark.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you turn up the brightness on the screen,
I know. I've done that many
you're not
times.
getting away with it. No, I'm joking. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. Honestly, a really, really important, really timely, really inspiring conversation, and I feel like you've left us with a lot of hope. In a situation that I wouldn't have assumed could be very hopeful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us this week. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you did, please hit the follow button to make sure you get next week's release.
We are now officially crowdsourcing Climate Confession, so please leave yours in the ratings and the reviews section, and we'll shout out a few next time.
A huge thank you to our headline partner, City, who has supported us for the past 6 years to bring world-changing ideas to the TEDxLondon stage, and has championed Climate Curious since day one.
And shout out to our fabulous team behind the pod.
This episode was produced by Josie Colter.
Comms written by Tess Lowry.
Artwork designed by Rebecca Mingus.
Curation by Mariam Pasha.
Mixed and engineered by Ben Beheshti.
Music also by Ben Beheshti.
Presented by Ben Hurst
and Mariam Pasha. Remember, stay curious.